Well, hello, everybody, and thank you very much for attending this presentation, which is brought to you by the National Motorcyclists Council. Those of you who attended the last conference event, which I spoke just after the launch of the NMC, it was early days for us. We'd already discovered that it had been very much welcomed by powers that be and various other organisations. And since then, we've been working quite hard on our public policy programme, which does include quite a wide range of road safety topics. It's great that the National Motorcycle Dealers Association has since joined the NMC, and we are also about to be sponsored by Plantech Assist as a corporate sponsor. So there is interest growing in the NMC, and today I have been asked to talk about what we actually mean when we talk about a UK national motorcycling strategy. A new motorcycle strategy is a central public policy contention of the NMC. There has been one before, but what are the barriers and opportunities to achieving it? And I hope today to illustrate some of these and perhaps give some cause for thought anyway, regarding public policy in motorcycling and also road safety policy in motorcycling, and where we can actually make things start to happen to utilise motorcycling more effectively in our transport network and to make it safer. Well, I suppose the first question is, why have a strategy at all? That's been asked of me on several occasions. Why do anything for motorcycling? We have road safety policies that are in place, there are licensing policies, there are technical regulatory policies. Is there a need for a strategy? Well, there really are three key reasons for it. On the road safety side, fundamentally important to the whole notion of a transport policy. We do have a lack of policy engagement. Motorcycling is ignored as a transport choice, apart from by a few, with some notable exceptions, particularly at local authority level. But up until now, when you look at the paradigm of transport alternatives, you've got walking, cycling, and public transport. Motorcycling very, very rarely mentioned, if at all, as part of that aim towards future transport. What this has actually meant is that when it comes to road safety policy, there's been limited investment under the whole Vision Zero paradigm. That's something I want to address a bit later. But because of there's been a limited investment and limited recognition, it's arguable that a sustained and vulnerable environment for riders continues to exist. What we also have is mobility in a changing transport environment. Transport policy is changing. How people move around is likely to change. COVID had a great effect on that, reduced confidence in public transport as an alternative, with many, many more people turning to commuter motorcycling and also cycling, also a great positive. But we have continuing traffic congestion and pollution. We now read that the levels of congestion are rising once again, and people are also looking for more dynamic personal transport. There is a need for transport innovation. There are new vehicle types emerging, but e-scoots, very much on vogue at the moment with the e-scooter trials, they are actually a form of powered two-wheeler. But what about the rest of the powered two-wheelers? In a way, we've got to think back to the future. Motorcycles have always been energy transport, and decades before they were very much a firmly established part of commuter transport. But it's been unsupported, often held back by, I suppose, what you could describe as stereotypical thinking about what motorcycling is all about. And this holding back of motorcycling because of what people perceive as the negatives generally results in a predictable safety outcome when the lack of support and investment in safety isn't put in. But with recent interest in new mobility types, it does make it logical that motorcycling's time has come. The pandemic itself revealed that. If you look at the sales of new scooters, if you look at the sales of zero-emission products as well, motorcycling has become vastly more popular in the last year or so. So now's the time to really start to think about doing something for motorcycling and moving beyond what we've managed to do before. Ultimately, the idea is nothing new. There was a government motorcycle strategy launched in 2005. And what's telling from that strategy is in the introduction. I've quoted here how there's a definite recognition by government at that time that motorcycling, powered two-wheelers, does make a significant contribution to addressing the nation's transport and traffic problems. Talking about benefits in terms of reduced congestion, environmental benefits, and affordability, which is also quite important, if anything, of growing importance when it comes to social inclusion. But what happened? To a great extent, the strategy as it was before, it was good, it had a lot in it, but there were a vast number of actions. A lot of it was process driven. The Transport Select Committee in 2006 actually pulled up the strategy on that. Although they welcomed what had been done, welcomed the strategy itself, they did question the amount of process that was put in and where were the outcomes that would flow from it. Very, very legitimate questions to answer. But it was a lost opportunity. I am given to wonder at times if there was ever any real buy-in from the government, certainly when it came to external forces and problems that emerged, particularly as part of the financial crisis in 2008 onwards. It was pretty much left behind when it came to rationalisation and reorganisation at departmental level. Other urgent matters did start to dominate the agenda. So licensing, we had a big review after the introduction of the two-part test and 3DLD. And there were various technical matters related to Euro standards that did dominate the agenda for some years. And the policy narrative became much more focused on walking, cycling and public transport. And in recent years, how we decarbonise transport with new targets now formed. But where is motorcycling within this? The fallout from leaving motorcycling behind means we're back to being ignored in core policy, regarded in some quarters almost like a dangerous two-wheeled naked car. And you see this from the way the stats are sometimes presented in various transport measures. You have walking, cycling, public transport, you have car use, no powered two-wheelers or maybe other, often with statistics grouped in amongst those given for cars. It's become a real problem because we can't actually analyse or look more in depth at some of the statistics that are produced because there is no box tick motorcycle. There has been engagement on some issues, very welcome engagement in fact. We talk to government on various issues. There are a lot of policy processes going on the safety side and the strategic element of motorcycling, particularly on licensing. But the strategic narrative, in other words, the command policy that says this is what the government wants to do with transport, we're still absent. We're either overlooked or in some cases discouraged. Safety investment focused on active travel. Again, I'll talk about that a bit further on. But active travel and safety is one thing, but safety also applies right across the modes of transport. The benefits of mobility, commuting, recreation, tourism, and the sport, and what that does for the economy and for people in society is basically unrecognised. So the overall result is a lack of policy recognition, and that policy support that's needed does hold back progress on road safety. We've got this whole really exciting agenda emerging on future transport and mobility. There's an opportunity here for powered two-wheelers to become part of that whole discussion, part of that whole future of transport. But we're not there. The opportunity is being wasted. Yes, there's support for novel powered two-wheeler products, such as e-scoots with the trials, but these are largely unregulated, limited regulation on the e-scoot trials. And this support is sort of puzzling when regulated mopeds with not quite the same, but broadly similar characteristics of mobility offer very much the same as an e-scoot does. In fact, it offers more. But let's look forward. 2021, an opportunity to improve safety and enrich transport choice. Part of our call is for 7 core areas to bring powered two-wheel transport into the mainstream. So these are the basic principles in terms of transport choice, better road safety and rider licensing policy, a recognition of the benefits in the context of the 3-pillar sustainability model, where future transport, decarbonisation and new technologies can come into play, and how these should support progress within the powered two-wheeled world, not least in terms of how wider government supports such technological development and encourages industry to provide products that the riders will want to ride. The accessibility of motorcycling to both urban and rural areas, not just in terms of low emission zones, but also green roads, and also how the social benefits of motorcycle sport can be utilised more effectively. How regulation and enforcement can work in the context of a more strategic framework for motorcycling as a whole. And finally, the protection of heritage, an extremely important part of motorcycling, and also something that is widely recognised by the general public. But looking at the fresh government motorcycle strategy, it's really about realising an opportunity for transport that powered two-wheelers represent. The creation of a new paradigm, walking, two-wheeled transport, public transport, meaning that all the developments that are happening in that area, including e-scoots, motorcycling and cycling, comes under that two-wheeled transport area. It's a simple to understand and progressive way of looking at transport policy going forward. How safety and training policy can support motorcycle use, make motorcycling more accessible and more less vulnerable for the people who ride, plus various measures which many of you will recognise from things that we've called for in the past. But taken together, a holistic approach to motorcycling in transport and also motorcycling in road safety policy. But focusing more on how we refresh road safety policy, I personally found that the recent discussions within DFT have been quite exciting on how we take a new approach to strategic road safety. There's a lot of innovation of ideas, including governance. Some quite exciting thoughts that various people have put forward on this. Also I feel it quite appropriate as well that safety policy has helped to progress wider government objectives. We hear about levelling up, strengthening the union, various other aspects of the wider government agenda, and the discussion about how road safety can support those objectives, I think, is absolutely key. It's good news that motorcycling is represented in discussions, but will this actually deliver for motorcycling? Sadly, when you look at some of the inputs to the government from various bodies that are out there that represent various sectors of road safety and otherwise, they themselves still don't talk about motorcycling. The NMC is, as well as its member organisations. It needs to be progressed. So we, as a council, have a prescription for the road safety strategy. And what sits at the base of this is that Vision Zero itself needs a refreshed narrative. Colin Brown from the Motorcycle Action Group yesterday talked about the welcoming roads philosophy. I won't try and repeat the things that he did say, but some key points that come out of the welcoming roads thinking is a recognition that Vision Zero has become far too conflated with active travel. So active travel, very much supported and for very good reasons. But what tends to happen is that support and investment when it comes to safety goes there. Motorcycling not seen as a transport solution. So there's limited investment in safety support and other measures to support motorcycling. If you look at Vision Zero as a philosophy though, doing it in such a way, conflating active travel with safety and Vision Zero, means that we won't get a delivery of zero deaths and serious injury. So we're looking at a central concept of Vision Zero not being developed because no investment or support goes into doing it. It will be a failure of the core philosophical concept. And much of it is down to the messaging itself and how it resonates with the public. The IAM Road Smart survey, 82% of the 1,300 respondents had not heard of Vision Zero. So that's 82% of the public that were sought or reached by this survey had not heard of Vision Zero as a road safety concept. To me, that represents a serious failure of marketing and also promotion and public recognition. So there is a clear need for Vision Zero to be refreshed, a new public narrative, and to apply Vision Zero across all forms of transport in an equally supportive way. If we do this, there's several positives for motorcycling and other road safety, road user groups that can come from this. We adopt a welcoming roads equivalency approach across road safety support. We can see an enhancement of work on the safe systems approach, improve governance of road safety on the basis of equality of transport support for all modes, improve road safety support aligned with transport policy recognition, which does mean a motorcycle strategy can be built on the back of this, which creates a new dynamic in transport policy generally. It would create better opportunities to work across government. There's quite a lot of different government departments have motorcycling involvement or interests, DEFRA, BAYS, DCMS, to name but three. So this in itself leads to improved opportunity to contribute to those wider public policy objectives, particularly in the areas of levelling up, technology, strengthening the union, and increasing the cohesion of society. In itself, that also leads to greater public awareness, aligned with investment, which reduces rider vulnerability for those who ride. We can also look at how a refreshed training and testing regime to improve accessibility can work as well. It's not about making the test easier or dumbing it down. It's about taking what's good, making it better understood. What the NMC has found through a basic analysis of road safety outcomes since 2009 does suggest that the changes to the test, and also the changes brought in 2013 under the third driving licence directive, has actually made motorcycling less safe. And if you have a regime for testing and training that doesn't deliver its core purpose, we do need to think again. The new road casualties investigation branch, bureau, board, which is being proposed and consulted upon by the DFT at the moment, is an exciting development in itself. But if we have a welcoming roads concept to road safety, it does mean that this new body will be more fully engaged with motorcycle safety needs, and that helps to raise standards overall. So in summary, I think there's been resistance to the idea of a motorcycling strategy on the basis that people think, well, we're just after promoting motorcycling. That's not really the case here. It's about creating a new dynamic for road safety and also a new dynamic for transport policy as a whole. It levels up motorcycling as a safety and transport policy priority. We do this under Refresh Vision Zero. We hear a lot about leveling up, but leveling up works across very many levels. And when it comes to what isn't being leveled up in motorcycling or other in public transport and public transport policy, motorcycling is something that needs that attention. Importantly, there are 1.4 million people who regularly ride. Well, around 60%, perhaps more, for practical reasons. We need to make the roads safer, less vulnerable for those who do currently ride, as well as those who will ride in the future. And in turn, the nation can then more safely benefit from the benefits of powered two-wheeler use and all the advantages listed here when it comes to creating results for transport overall, which are positive for society. But in closing, I think we need to remind ourselves of a few things. Motorcycling, like any other vulnerable mode of transport, is not in itself dangerous. That users are highly vulnerable. If you overlook them in the transport policy, you end up with sustained high casualty numbers and vulnerability full stop. That thinking has got to change. There needs to be a bit of common sense applied to it. The old stereotypes, dirty, noisy, smelly, dangerous, antisocial. When you look at how motorcycle usage patterns have evolved over the last 20 years, suggests that these old stereotypes are quite redundant. Shift those aside and look at the powered two-wheeler paradigm as something quite different and something that is part of the nation's future of transport. We have to challenge blind spots. The enthusiasm and promotion of e-scoots has been interesting. In some cases, exciting as an idea of looking at new transport. But what we're actually looking at here is the promotion of a largely unregulated concept of transport, while ignoring what's already regulated and can contribute to transport policy needs today. This simply doesn't make sense. Transport and mobility is evolving, and yes, it does need to evolve. Things are changing, particularly when it comes to demands of the environment, the demands of the city and the urban areas. We do not need to waste the opportunity presented by motorcycling within this. Let's embrace it, make biking a safer experience for those who use motorcycles, and allow us all to benefit from the clear advantages. So that's basically my core message. It's a simple one. Motorcycling does play a part in transport policy. Get the safety strategy right. Take a welcoming roads approach to how motorcycling is viewed in safety policy and transport policy, and we can actually make real progress. And the final slide here gives you some contact details and information. Please do engage with the NMC. This is a debate. Let's discuss further. Let's make progress, and let's make Britain's transport and transport safety a more exciting and dynamic environment to be in. Thank you very much.